benefit of those who miss, or in case I have to miss class, if it's a class I've done before, I can throw up a video to you, and that way we don't get behind. So let's start with the syllabus, and I'm going to kind of work from my printed version and the one that's up here. This is the PDF version. It should be exactly the same as the Word version, but I'll warn you right now, why are we not moving? Go back up. This thing is acting very strange today. So I'm Dr. Sherman. My office is the office block that's catty corner to this room over there. Go in, take a left, take a right, and take a right. It's all the way back in the corner. Peck Hall 352. Office hours 5 to 6 Monday and Thursday, and 7 to 8 in the morning Tuesday and Thursday by appointment. Those are essentially the hours before all 4 of my classes. You've got my email address there, ted.sherman@mtsu.edu, which I notice I did not even include my phone number on this one. That's because I don't answer my phone. I probably literally have not answered my phone in the last 10 years. And that's because I can look at the who's calling. 95% of the time it's spam. Somebody's trying to sell me something. If it's somebody on campus, I'll get a text or an email that says, so-and-so tried to reach you. If I know them, I call them back or I send them an email. If I don't know the person, I generally ignore it. But if you need to reach me, that's the best way. Because sad to say, I'm usually online. How many hours a day are there? 24? 16? So if you email me and you don't hear back from me within about 4 or 5 hours, that's strange. I kind of have a personal policy of I respond to emails at the absolute most 24 hours. Okay? Usually it's within 4 or 5 hours. Okay? Obviously, this is English 2020, section 58. We meet from 8 to 9:25 in this room. And it's, I don't know what it actually says in the catalog. Is it the Bible and literature? Or is it the Bible literature or something?
I think it's and.
As the course was proposed several years ago by a guy who's no longer here, it's supposed to be the Bible and literature. I'm kind of doing it the Bible and / as literature. The way he proposed it, they'd read a story, something from the Bible, and then they'd go look for something else in literature that was based upon that, similar to that kind of thing. We're going to be reading it more as the Bible as literature, the stories of the Bible, that kind of thing. And so what you have here on the first page of the syllabus, this is what's called the frontispiece, or the title page to the 1611 King James. And we could go through and unpack all the symbolism, but I'm not going to because we don't have time. You can look at facsimiles, for example, of the King James on the internet and stuff. So we have 2 required texts, simply because I have to put texts that are required. So this is the first one, New Oxford Annotated Bible with the Apocrypha. This is the expanded edition from 1977. It's not one of those later than that. This is listed only 2 editors. All the later New Oxford Annotated Bibles have like 20 editors because they have almost a different editor for each book of the Bible. Okay, there's 39 books in the Old Testament, in the Protestant Old Testament, and 27 in the New Testament. So that's close to 66. It is 66. Okay? They don't have quite 66 editors, but it's pretty close. This has 2. Herbert May and Bruce Metzger. May did the Old Testament. Metzger did the New Testament. Okay? If you don't have this version, that's okay. But when we're talking about passages and such, I might refer to a page number rather than a book, chapter, verse. And if it's page number and you've got something else, it's going to be quite a bit different. Similarly, if I'm using this and you're using, I don't know, the New International Version, translation's going to be quite a bit different. Okay? Or you're using a King James Version. And we'll talk a little bit, maybe today, probably Thursday, about why the King James Version and the Revised Version are significantly different. They're based on different manuscripts. Okay? And then I added this one at the last minute. Leland Ryken, not the same thing on the back. How to read the Bible as literature, ... and get more out of it. Ryken's an English professor, or was an English professor. I think he's retired now, at Wheaton College, which is an evangelical Christian school in Wheaton, Illinois. He's done a whole lot on in the field of English, and I don't have his other book with me. But this is relatively short, 200 pages, and it kind of gives you a nice introduction to how to read various kinds of biblical stories and such. I probably won't make a whole lot of references to this in class. I've got it assigned for specific days depending upon what we're covering in the Bible that day. This, however, or the Bible, we'll make reference to every day, just about every minute of every day. Okay, so bring this to class. Okay, I don't care if you have a hard copy version or if you put it on your phone. You can put it on your phone. You can't get this exact one via the internet, but you can get the revised edition or the revised version of the Bible on the internet. So, you don't have to shell out however much they charge you for this, okay? Disclaimer. This is huge, the first part of it. The syllabus is subject to revision. What do I mean? We might get behind, okay? Bill up here is smiling because he's sat in on a few of my classes before, and he knows how likely that is to happen. For example, I've got set on the syllabus the schedule. And the schedule says we're going to talk today about the syllabus and maybe, what the Bible is. And then on, today's Tuesday, on Thursday, this is all the stuff you're supposed to read from the Oxford Annotated Bible, the front matter, that is everything that's in here, essentially, all this stuff. Everything before, in the beginning, God. Okay? And so we'll probably spend some time talking about that, as well as how to read the Bible, which is at the end, okay, or nearly the end, and modern approaches to biblical study. And so there's a bunch of kind of background reading from this. And then Genesis 1 through 11 and Ryken's preface in here. The preface in here is not really? Oh, preface and chapter 1, because the preface is one page. Chapter 1 is about 21 pages or so, okay? The most important thing, if you don't read anything else, and I shouldn't be saying this because it's all important, the most important thing of all of that to read is Genesis 1 through 11, okay? So we're going to attempt to discuss all of that in 85 minutes. Probably not going to do all of it. And then the next day, Tuesday after Labor Day, Genesis 12 to 24, Ryken chapter 2. Now again, I probably won't say much about Ryken, but Genesis chapters 12 through 24, man, that's a lot of material. And I don't mean just length. I mean biblical figures. Abraham and his boys, for example. Okay, Abraham and his sons and grandsons and the whole story of the patriarchs and all that kind of stuff. I mean, just Genesis 1 through 11. How many of you have read Genesis before? Okay, some of you have. How's it begin? In the beginning, right? And so we begin with creation, right? And then it does what? It moves quickly to the story of the fall. And we could probably stop right there and just use that and cover the whole rest of the semester and just talk about creation and the fall. But we can't, because there's another whole 65 books of the Bible plus the rest of Genesis. So we go from there to Noah, the story of Noah and the flood, Tower of Babel, and it just keeps on going. So there's an awful lot of material to try to cover in each day, which is why we will probably get behind. I'm still going to try to make it so that by the time we get to the end of the semester, you will have read the beginning and the end, and some of the middle. Obviously, we can't read everything. Well, take that back. We can't cover everything in class. You could read this cover to cover in a semester. Okay? In fact, I'd strongly encourage you to do so. So, all that is to say, syllabus is subject to revision. Changes will be made orally in class. They'll be recorded, obviously, so they'll be on YouTube. It's your responsibility to keep track of those changes. If you're not here, watch the YouTube version of it. Don't email me and say, did I miss anything important? Because I'm going to be an egotist and say, well, of course, because everything I say is important. So, if for some reason I've got to miss class, I will email you / post a message on the D2L announcements page by 6 o'clock. So that should give you plenty of time. Notice, hopefully none of you are leaving by 6 o'clock to get here, though I know parking, especially the first couple of weeks, can be a challenge. That's one way of putting it. Another way is language I won't use. Students with disabilities, you know who you are. Get me the appropriate paperwork. That should already actually have been done because Office of Disabled Student Services is pretty good about notifying me ahead of time. Okay, course objectives. Let me go back here because I'm looking at one thing and you're looking at something else. To learn and understand what the Bible is and how it came to be, that's the first one. It's not necessarily the foremost one, the most important one, okay? To understand and appreciate the Bible as a work of or works of literature, that's the biggie. That's the most important part, okay? To learn the various literary genres within the Bible. For example, what does Genesis contain at least some of? Several of you said you'd read it before. Talks about Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Jacob then goes in and talks about his 2 children, right? Or his several sons. Okay? So you have some history. Okay? What about the books of Chronicles and Kings? That's all history. Okay? Numbers is pretty much all history. Okay? What about something like the Psalms? It's not history. Pure poetry. Okay? Ecclesiastes, pure poetry. Job, bit of poetry, not really much history. Some would say some fantasy, because you start off with God and Satan's talking to God, and some people would say, well, that's all fantasy because God doesn't exist and Satan doesn't exist. Okay? We'll go into those kind of things. Okay? So the various genres within the Bible. And then to learn the Bible's importance in and influence on Western culture and literature. And I'll make a lot of comparisons or references from an element of the Bible to something in Western culture, painting possibly, film possibly, definitely literature. Primarily English, but maybe a little bit of other, Italian like Dante and things like that. So, requirements. Daily reading of assigned materials, primarily the Bible. Pretty much after this week, the Bible, and then when a chapter from Riken is assigned. Okay, so you're to read this material before each day's class, obviously. Daily reading of assigned materials and daily or every other day quizzes. Quizzes will, I don't know about that. I might soften that a little bit. Quizzes will probably comprise the majority of your semester grade. If they're daily quizzes, yeah, that will be the most of your grade because there'll be at least 10 points. That'll be a lot of quizzes. That'll be a lot of points. What will the quizzes be over? The Bible. They won't be over writing. Okay? So Genesis 1 through 11. Name Adam's first two sons, Cain and Abel. What happens? What does one son do to the other? Cain kills Abel. That kind of thing. Who, what, when, where, why, how? Who's it about? Who's doing the action? What's the action? What's the plot? Where does that occur? When does it occur? Why does that occur? And how does it occur? Because there are some things where the how is important. For example, Moses, before the Red Sea, does what? He holds the rod up, he holds his staff up, and then God splits the Red Sea. Moses, in one part, God tells him to touch a rock, and water will come forth to give water to the wandering Hebrews. And what does Moses do? Smash! He smashes the rock. And because he smashes the rock, God says you're not going to enter the promised land. So there's the how. He smashes rather than doing what he's supposed to do. The why is because he's pissed. He's been dealing with the griping, complaining, mumbling for years. Going, at that point, almost 40. Okay? He's headed up to here. And because he's headed up to here, and he responds out of anger, he doesn't get to enter the promised land like those who have been born during the period of sojourn will. Okay? So, quizzes will probably comprise a majority of your grade. What else? Possibly, and I've got them in the syllabus, so it's more likely than possibly, 3 take-home exams, and then possible short writing assignments. Possible, not likely, okay? But it's possible that I might throw something out at you. I say 300 to 1,200 words. 1,200 words is definitely not likely. 300 to 500, it's like a page to 2 pages at most. It would be more likely if I were to do that, okay? Cell phones, laptops, all that kind of stuff. I never used to have to include this kind of policy, but over the last couple of years, I have to. Use of cell phones for calls, texting, selfies, etc. is strictly prohibited. I had a student about 2 years ago, 2 classrooms over, I believe, or 1 classroom over, who sat in the back corner, and I'm not kidding, the first probably 3 weeks of class every day. She spent, I'm not exaggerating, about the first 45 minutes each class taking selfies. Just sitting there. And I'm like, Jordan, put it away. She failed the class because, she was so absorbed in herself, she obviously, didn't learn anything. So don't. If you're a first responder, EMT, fire, police, etc., let me know. Like, if not today, Thursday. And you can have your phone out, have it on silent. If you have an ongoing family situation or emergency that requires you to keep your phone available, let me know immediately, and I'll tell you to keep it on silent and on your desk, okay? Similarly, if a family ongoing situation or emergency arises during the semester, let me know immediately. Somebody gets in a car accident, somebody gets diagnosed with cancer, somebody has a heart attack, etc. Take care of what immediately needs to be done, but within a day, just send me an email that says, Dr. Sherman, I've had a family emergency. You don't necessarily have to go into a lot more detail, okay? And I'll say, okay, that will tell me why you're not at class the next day. If it turns out you're going to miss class for several periods, a follow-up email with a little bit more explanation, and guess what? I will do everything I can to work with you. to make sure you can successfully complete the class. That might mean you no longer attend class. And you do the assignments and you watch everything via YouTube. I had that happen with one student last fall. Okay? Student still passed the class. It was a C, but she passed the class. But from like the end of September on, we never saw her in class again. Because I think she actually had 2 family emergencies. Father had a heart attack or something, and mother had a mental breakdown or something similar. So she was, kind of just scrambling to stay afloat. If something happens, let me know immediately. Why? Because if you do what 2 students did in spring semester, and you drop off the radar mid-October, and then you email me literally the beginning of finals week, you've already failed. I mean, you've literally already failed the class. Now, when midterm grades are due, if you've dropped off the radar, I will include one of those little comments that goes to your advisor saying, so-and-so has missed X number of classes. So-and-so has already failed. He or she should drop. Okay, and that person will contact you. Usually, if I do that, the student then contacts me. If you don't, too bad. Okay, so I'll work with you, but you got to give me something to work with. What else? Strongly discourage the use of laptops, tablets for note-taking, a number of studies, and I used to include an asterisk here and then a link down below to several different studies. Just for sheer space saving, I've taken it off. If you want them, I'll email them to you. Number of studies shown that students who take notes via laptop or tablet do worse in classes than those who take notes by hand. Notice however you take notes, notice what I am presupposing there, that you will take notes, okay? Best way to pass a class, take notes, be engaged. If you don't, I can almost guarantee you, not 100%, but 95% guarantee you won't get a good grade. Now, you might pass the class, but it'll likely be with a D. Not because I'm sitting here taking mental notes of those who aren't taking notes, and therefore, if you're not taking notes, I'm going to, somehow on the sly lower your grade. It's just because you won't be able to do well on the quizzes, on the exams, etc., etc. Okay? What else? You can use your laptop, tablet, phone, etc. for reading for the Bible, etc. BibleGateway.com would be a good way to go to, follow along in class because you've got, I don't remember what it is now. It's got something like 40 or 50 different editions. Different versions, different translations of the Bible available, okay? By all means, you're welcome to do that, okay? But if I see or hear that a computer, cell phone, laptop, tablet, etc. is being used for Facebook, email, internet searching, Pornhub. Yes, I've actually had students come up and tell me, would you tell so-and-so who sits in front of me to quit searching porn? I'll talk to you. In fact, if that happens, before I even talk to you, I will send an email over to Judicial Affairs. They will talk to you. Why? Because that violates all kinds of MTSU's policies and all that kind of stuff. Okay? If you persist, you'll be reported to Student Affairs. I'll ask that you be removed from the course. They pretty much go with what the professor asks for. Okay? Classroom decorum. Attendance, participation, decorum are expected. What does the word decorum mean? Proper behavior, good manners, etc. So, these are examples of proper behavior and good manners. Arrive to class on time. Arriving after class has begun is rude, disrespectful, and disruptive. If I close this door like at 10 after 8, it will be locked. And more than likely, after the first couple weeks, I won't open it. That is, first couple weeks, because it's the beginning of the semester, parking's got to, get resolved a little bit, I'll cut you a little slack. But after the first couple of weeks, come 8:10, 8:15, if I close the door and you show up at 8:30, don't even bother knocking, because that's rude and disruptive. It's going to stay closed, right? What else? You're quiet. You pay attention to me if I'm talking to each other, if someone else is talking. You're courteous to others. That doesn't mean you have to come in and bow to people when they come in, or refer to them as madam or monsieur. It just means being nice to each other. Pure and simple. When speaking in class, you should use language appropriate to the setting, no swearing or foul language, and I'll be the first to tell you, probably every now and then, I'll say damn or hell or something like that, but no F words, etc. Okay? Don't eat during class. I don't mind if you bring in water, a cup of coffee. Don't come in with a bag of Doritos, because the person next to you is probably going to be, going into some kind of fit from all the crunching. Don't sleep during class. I know this is an nervous class, but if you do, and I've done this many times before, if you're sitting here and your head is down on the desk, I'm going to do that, okay, and wake you up. Or, as I've done twice before in class, this is starting my 27th year here teaching, 30th year overall, I might just tell everybody, and we'll all just leave. Let you sleep silently so that when you wake up, you will be very surprised. It's usually enough, okay? Don't do homework or assignments for other classes in this class. In other words, if I see a biology textbook out in front of you, I'm going to tell you to put it away. I'll probably tell you not, especially if I see a biology textbook out in front of you and there's not a Bible anywhere to be found, okay? I never had this before. Don't wear headphones or earbuds during class. I had 2 or 3 students last spring and last fall who would come in and wear their earbuds throughout the entire class period. In fact, one guy in a slightly bigger room than this, who sat in the far back corner, I could hear the music throughout the class. And I don't remember what his name was, Fred, take them off. He also did not do very well because he was too absorbed in whatever it was he was listening to. Okay? Don't cheat or, obviously, plagiarize from another's work, and that you come prepared to participate in class. What does prepare to participate in class mean? It means you bring the Bible every day to class. Okay? Students who come without it and or a means to take notes, you're going to get penalized. 5 points. That is, if I notice, and I'm not going to go around and say, show me your Bible, I'm not going to do that. But if I notice that you don't have a Bible and you don't have a means to take notes, whether a laptop or a tablet or this stuff and something to write on, if it's paper towels from the bathroom and a crayon, that works, okay? But I've had too many students over the last couple of years. I don't know what's going on. If there's something in the water, something in the air, something in the high schools, I've had too many students over the last couple of years who come to class literally with nothing. They come and they sit. They might as well be a chair, right? And then they expect to get A's. I had one student last semester. He challenged me on something at the end of a class. At the end of the class, he'd gotten a paper back. I was like, Jamal or something like that. He said, what do you expect? You never brought, and this was the end of the semester, you never brought ever a single book to class. You never, ever took notes. You spent most of your time on your phone. How do you expect to do any better than this? Well, I was here at least. Were you? Really? I mean, your body might have been here, but I kind of thought, mine was elsewhere. Okay? So, come prepared. This is how I know you're participating. Okay? If you don't abide by these guidelines, I'll speak to you. You keep doing it, you'll be reported. I'll ask you to be removed from class. What else? We're going to cover, this is to put it mildly. We will cover a great deal of material in each class period. So it's imperative that you not miss, notice the cute little parentheses, many/any classes. Because the class meets twice a week, you can miss 3 classes without any damage, without any penalties, okay? But a 4th absence, which is essentially 2 entire weeks out of a 15-week schedule, that's 1/7 of the class just about, okay? Your grade will go down 1 entire letter grade for the semester. So if you're pulling an A, it's going to be a B. If you're pulling a D, you just failed the class by not being here, okay? A 5th absence, failure for the course. So, you know you're going to have the rip-roaringest best party on a Monday night, and you're going to be dead to the world Tuesday morning. Have at it. You do that 3 nights in a row, though, 3 Monday nights in a row, though, and you miss that 4th class, I hope the beer was good because, it just ate away part of your grade. So again, you do all this, you persist, etc. If you know in advance you've got to miss class, you've got a university-sponsored activity, a sport, a cultural event that you're part of, not, you're just going to a game or to a concert or something, and therefore you have to miss class, that doesn't cut it. But you're part of it, okay, let me know. Usually I'll get an email from whoever the person in charge of that is. Similarly, we meet Tuesdays and Thursdays. Rutherford County Traffic Court. You get a ticket. You got a ticket in the summer, maybe. Probably you're going to court Tuesday or Thursday morning, sometime this fall. Okay? Let me know. I won't count that against you. Okay? You come down with the flu. Don't come. Send me an email. Everything's on YouTube. Okay? Again, goes back to what I said earlier. Let me know, I'll work with you. Don't let me know, you get what's coming, okay? No makeup quizzes or exams will be given. Late papers will be accepted only with prior approval of the instructor. And again, that's only for very good reason. My printer ran out of ink. That's not a good reason, folks. That's all just part of normal life. You prepare for things like that. How? You have backup printer cartridges. Okay? The library printer ran out of ink. Not a good excuse. My best friend was shot, had to take him to the emergency room. That's a pretty good excuse. But I will need something as proof. I will need proof of that. You don't have to bring in your friend, with the open GSW, but, something from the emergency room that shows you were there, which usually you can get without any problem. Or a family emergency, That's, disregard this link. Well, actually, let's see what that link does. Yeah, it's completely wrong link. Disregard that link. I'll send you an updated one. So, where were we? Failure to complete any assignment other than daily quizzes will result in failure for the course. So, even though I say here, unapproved late papers will receive an F. What does that mean? Well, if you go to the grading scale, down here, papers grading scale is right here. So, if you get an A on your paper, you get 100 points. If you get an A minus, you get 90. That's new. When did I put that up? I don't remember that. If you get an F, you get 55 points. Okay? You don't turn in a paper, you fail the course. You turn the paper in late, 2 weeks late, you get an F. See the difference? You're failing the course you can't dig out of. 55 points, yeah, it might be a deep hole. It doesn't sink you. Because you get an F, a 55 on one paper, and let's say you get a C, a 75 on another paper. What do those two grades automatically become? That's a D. That's a passing grade. Okay? So even with one F, maybe even with two Fs on exams, because of the quiz grades, that's not going to sink you. You don't turn something in other than a quiz, you're totally sunk. Okay? And I go on to there about late papers, etc. again. So, grading scale is pretty easy, or how do I do the semester grading is pretty easy. I take the total number of points you earned by the total number of points possible, divide them, that gives me a number, 83.7. Well, an 83.7 is going to get rounded up to an 84. Okay? Schedule. As stated above, you are to read each day's assignment before class, be prepared to take the quiz, and to discuss it. Very tentative schedule will be adjusted, as I said below, and then I give a little clue or legend as to how to understand what comes below. OAB refers to New Oxford Annotated Bible. Riken refers to Riken's book, etc. So today, syllabus, which we're nearly done with, and then what the Bible is. Notice not what is the Bible. Okay? Tuesday, whatever the day is, Thursday, we'll hopefully discuss that material there. And then the following Tuesday, middle part of Genesis, probably won't discuss Riken, but I want you to read Riken. Because reading that chapter of Riken should help you a little bit, make maybe a little bit more sense of that part of Genesis. Then, 2 weeks from today, is that right? It's 1 week from today. 2 weeks from Thursday. No, 1 week from Thursday. Man, brain's already fried. Hopefully we'll finish Genesis. Okay? The following Tuesday, notice, all of Exodus. That's a lot of material. Are we going to be able to go through Exodus verse by verse? No, we're not. There's a lot we're going to have to skip. Okay? And I could throw out here, you might give yourself a little bit of help. I'm really leery about saying this. But I will anyways. By looking up something or watching something like the old, not too old, 20 years old or so, trying to remember who the producers were. Spielberg and Geffen and those guys. Prince of Egypt, animated thing. What's their company? Louder?
DreamWorks?
Yeah, I think it's DreamWorks. Prince of Egypt, about Moses. It's relatively accurate. It's a little more accurate probably than Cecil B. DeMille's 10 Commandments with Charlton Heston. That's got some much better special effects though, even though it's 1950s. But pick up some popular version of or film version of this. I don't recommend, for example, for Genesis and the Noah story, the fat and paunchy now, Gladiator. Russell Crowe. The Russell Crowe version of Noah. I would probably stay away from that. Okay? So, Exodus, Judges. Here's how tentative the syllabus may be. I might drop Judges, but I don't want to. Why? Because it's got one of the most famous figures of the Old Testament, Samson. And then a couple of others, Deborah, one of the female leaders of the Jews, a woman who kills an oppressor of the Jews, another one. Okay, Samuel's pretty important. He's one of the early prophets, etc., etc. He's the one who anoints the first king. Saul, we'll talk about that. If all goes according to this schedule, we will have the first exam distributed on the 19th. Okay? It'll be over everything from today until the end of that class period. Okay? And then that'll be due a week later. Now, that exam will be obviously take home. Obviously, therefore, it'll be essay. There's not going to be multiple choice or true false on a take home exam. And the take home exam will probably have anywhere from a minimum of 4 to a maximum of 8 questions or topics. Choose one. Just one. And you'll write somewhere between, I don't know if I included it on here. I don't know, somewhere between 600 to 1,000 words, 2 to 3.5 pages on that topic. That topic will obviously be based on something in this material or all of this material. Asking for what is a unifying theme in all these books that we've read or discussed. Probably won't be something that broad. It might actually be on one, because there will be multiple topics, there might be a topic that's just on one character. Or a group of characters, the patriarchs kind of a thing, right? So after we do that, we will start these books: Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes. They're essentially all poetic books. They're also essentially all wisdom books. That is, they are books that impart wisdom, okay? Especially Job and Proverbs. And if you've never read Job before, be prepared to have your mind blown. Because Job is entirely about what's called the problem of evil. Why do bad things happen to good people? Because Job is your quintessential good person. I mean, he's not just a good person. He's a great person. He doesn't do anything wrong. He feeds the poor. He clothes the naked. He does all that kind of stuff. He's wealthy beyond all measures. Tons of children. Everybody's fat, dumb, and happy. Until one morning he wakes up and all of his kids die. Just all hell breaks loose. And he's like, why? And his 3 friends come to comfort him. And they turn out to be like salt in an open wound. They're not very comforting. But unbeknownst to Job, there's certain things happening that he doesn't know. Okay? Which we'll talk about when we get to it. So, Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes. And when we do Ecclesiastes, I'll bring in a song from the 1960s by the Byrds. Turn, turn, turn. Because it's taken straight from Ecclesiastes. This was a chart topper based on a biblical text. Okay? This is the middle of the 60s. Sex, drugs, rock and roll, anti-Vietnam, pro-Vietnam, all that kind of stuff. It's pretty interesting. So then we'll have a second exam. And again, you'll have a little bit over a week, closer to 2 weeks on that one, because fall break, and I'm not going to screw up your fall break totally, a little bit. Then we'll come back from fall break, and we'll have Isaiah. Notice, pretty long. Okay? Ezekiel, Daniel. 3 major prophets, depending upon how you understand them. In the Hebrew Old Testament, Daniel's not included among the prophets. Okay? Which we'll talk about a little bit. Then we'll have another exam covering those 3. And then we start the New Testament. Why more time spent on the Old Testament than the New Testament? Because it's a lot longer. 39 books in the Protestant version of the Bible in the Old Testament, only 27 in the New. Okay? And this is where I definitely have decided to make a revision that's not found its way in here yet. I don't know how I'm going to do this, but we're going to do it. We're going to add Mark. So we're going to read all four Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Okay? Because there are some things in Mark that aren't found in the others, or at least there are some perspectives in Mark that aren't found in the others. Okay? The three, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, they're called the synoptic Gospels. Syn meaning the same or together, optic, look. They look alike. They look alike. That is, they essentially tell the exact same stories in somewhat different perspectives, but the Gospel of John is entirely different. Why? The Gospel of John is called the theological gospel. It's all deep theology. Theology, language, talk, science, study of God, etc. Okay? So we're going to read all of the Gospels. Why? Who are they about? Louder? Jesus. Main figure of the New Testament, etc. Okay? Then we have Acts, history of the early church, which is what that is. 1 Corinthians, one of Paul's early letters after Romans. Book of James, which Martin Luther didn't think should be included in the New Testament. He hated that book. Okay, we'll talk about why. And then Revelation. We're not going to get into when's it all going to happen. Because the early church didn't think Revelation was about chronology. The early church thought Revelation, its real title is the Apocalypse. Okay? Which is the unfolding, the revealing, which is why it's called Revelation. They thought it was all about their time right then, right now. Okay? But every kind of generation wants to read it as, when's it going to happen? When's Jesus coming back? Kind of thing. You're going to see when we get to the Gospels, the apostles wanted to know that. Before Jesus is dead, before he dies, they're like, because he tells them about, the times to come. They're like, when's it going to be? And he tells them essentially, shut up, don't worry about it. Just do what I tell you to do. It'll happen. Okay? Then we get Thanksgiving. We finish Revelation, hopefully. Final exam will be distributed. Okay? If, big, huge if, it's a take-home. Might not be. Okay? The earlier part of the syllabus mentioned possibly 3 take-home exams. Well, this will be the 4th. Okay? If it's not a take-home exam, then it'll be done in class, whatever day that is, December 10th, Tuesday, December 10th from 8 to 10 a.m. If it is a take-home exam, you'll just bring it to my office and turn it in by 10 o'clock that morning. Okay? So you have some important dates also included there. Those dates are essentially, if you want to drop the class, when you can drop it and still get money back. Or when you can drop it without failing and get a W kind of thing, so it doesn't affect your GPA and stuff. Plagiarism, this is my definition. This is an MTSU's definition. For example, I think it's utterly asinine that MTSU says that if you quote from yourself, that's plagiarism. How can that be plagiarism? Plagiarism, literally, is the use of somebody else's words, ideas, structure, argument without proper attribution. You don't give them credit. Whose? Another's. Now, unless you have some kind of psychiatric problem, you are not another. You are yourself. But the way MTSU talks about that is using work from a different or previous class without acknowledging it. You will be very hard-pressed in this class to find something from one of your other classes to work into. Unless maybe it's a philosophy class, or you're a, religious studies major or minor, and you've taken there the Bible course, which will be very, very different from this one. Okay? So, possible essay examinations, you have some stuff there. about documentation, how it should be formatted, all that kind of stuff. You've got comments here about what kind of papers will receive what kind of grades. You have some comments here about paraphrases, how to do them. And then you have an example of what the first page of a paper should look like. Why do I include this? Well, was it last year or 2 years ago? I think it's 2 years ago. I was teaching a course, and I had my syllabus just like this. And I had this page, and I had up here my name, because this is like my paper that I wrote. So Ted Sherman, the course, Dr. Sherman, because I was also the imaginary professor of the course, the date the paper was due, the title, and then up here, my last name and the page number for each page. I had a student turn in a paper with my name as the author. And I went over it just like I'm going over this now. So I said, put your name here, the course, my name here. I forgot about that. I have actually, because I said put my name here, I've actually had one student turn in a paper that said my name here. I'll be blunt. If you're that stupid, you shouldn't be here. I mean, just. So put your name where John Smith is. Put your last name here. Because I had one student who put their name correctly here. But because I had my name here, they put my name here. I won't say anything else about that. Okay, so we've got roughly 25 minutes, 27 minutes. So, let me get rid of this. Exit. That way it was more permanent. What the Bible is. I think that's not what I had my title. Well, what the Bible is, depends kind of upon what you think about it. What do I mean by that? Let me back up for just a moment. So you've got these two required books, and I will bring in periodically, and I'm gonna type up for you. I just haven't done it yet, and send to you, some resources if you're interested. I got several of these books kind of in preparation. I didn't like any of them, so I didn't use them. The Bible is Literature and Introduction. Okay, and it's exactly what it sounds like. The wisdom literature, the prophetic writings, the formation of the canon, the Bible and history, ancient Near Eastern literature, literary forms and strategies in the Bible, Judaism and the Intertestamental. Okay, so it's kind of background stuff. The Great Code by Northrop Frye, the Bible and literature. This guy is a major literary critic and theorist who approached the Bible from that perspective. Much like Ryken, but he does it from the perspective of myth. The Bible is this great mythic code. Okay? We'll talk about myth in just a moment. The Oxford Companion to the Bible, edited by Bruce M. Metzger, one of your editors of the New Oxford Annotated Bible, and this other guy, Michael D. Coogan. And it's exactly what it sounds like. You can open it up to any page, and it's essentially like an encyclopedia. So you have an entry. Neighbor, Nehemiah, the book of, needle's eye. Where is there a reference to a needle's eye in the Bible? Well, it's in the Gospels, etc., etc. So pretty much anything and everything that's referred to in the Bible is in here. It gives you an explanation of it. It's really, really good. Right? This one's really expensive. Dictionary of Biblical Tradition and English Literature. So, for example, just opened wildly. Mary Magdalene. It goes into Mary Magdalene in the New Testament, and then how Mary Magdalene figures in English literature. Plays that are written about her, how she's used as a character in medieval stories, and later, if it were written now, meaning 2019, it would probably have to be updated to include some of Dan Brown's novels, where Mary Magdalene is Jesus' lover and such, or Kazantzakis' The Last Temptation of Christ, where, Jesus has these, pornographic dreams about Mary while he's hanging on the cross and stuff, right? So those are just resources that are available, that are out there. Like I said, I'm going to get you a whole bunch. Okay, so go back. What the Bible is. Started this way. What's the Bible about? What's it about? Anybody read the Bible cover to cover before? Okay. Come on, this is not a trick question. It's not a hard question. How's it begin? What comes after the first three words? Not literally, but yeah, that's how it begins. In the beginning, God. So it's about, at the very least, God. What does that presuppose? What's the word presuppose mean? Pre, before. Okay, so what's the verb suppose mean? Like, I suppose that's true. Doesn't mean that you've rationally argued, thought it logically out. Sup comes from sub, which means beneath, right? It's not actually from supra, it's not above, it's below, and it becomes the P because of this part. Pose. What does it mean to pose? Okay? What does it mean to posit something? Or to have a position? All of them are related to take a stance. It's a statement. Okay? So to presuppose, or a presupposition, is a before stance taking. That is, not something you've logically argued, rationally thought through, but it's a position you take. What kind of presuppositions are there? Every day floating around us, or presuppositions that every one of you make every morning. Because every one of you does. And you don't think about it. That's why it's a presupposition. How many of you got up this morning thinking, I'm going to die today? To get exceedingly morbid. Probably nobody. Why? Because the presupposition is, I'm going to get up and today's going to be like what? Every other day. Today's going to be like yesterday. How so? Well, you get up. Bingo. Everything else flows just from that. Okay? And then you're going to do what? Shower, get breakfast maybe, go to school / work. That's going to be boring as usual. You're going to go home. You're going to eat. You're going to maybe see friends or family. You're going to go to bed. And then what happens? The cycle starts again. Again. Little Orphan Annie sang about it. The sun will do what? Come up tomorrow. What about when it doesn't? 9/11. Yeah, it literally did. Metaphorically, for those who were above around floor 80, 88 in the World Trade Center, didn't come up again. For those who were in the planes, or people who, whack jobs show up at universities with automatic weapons or pistols or whatever, and they, because they got a bad grade or were jilted by some lever, they shoot everybody. Okay? It's not the same every day. But we presuppose it's going to be. So that's an example of a presupposition. Okay? You might have as a presupposition, this is the first week of classes. You might walk into a class thinking, it's going to be like every other damn boring class. And it might be. Okay? But that's a presupposition. Why? Because you don't know that that's going to be the case. It might turn out that I don't know, intro to theater professor you have is really cool, really funny, and makes that material come alive. Or it might be that she speaks all in monotone and doesn't vary her cadence or her intonation at all. And you just, okay? So, it presupposes what? That God exists. Your presupposition might be God doesn't exist. That is, it's an idea you hold that you've not logically thought about or logically proven. And I'm not here to convert anybody, okay? This is not a course in Christian interpretation of the Bible. It's a course in the Bible's literature. Does that mean we won't talk about any quote-unquote Christian interpretation of the Bible? No, it doesn't. Because when you talk about the Bible, you're automatically talking about, one, God. Who else? Jesus, a little bit later on. Is Jesus mentioned in the opening chapters of Genesis? Yes, but how? Literally? No. Do you see Jesus literally there? No, you don't. But according to early and later, even up to today, interpreters, Jesus is present. Because how does God say, when he comes up with the idea of creating humanity, let us create man in our image. Us and our are both what? They're plural forms of pronouns. That means God is not a necessary, here's where we get into deep theology, a singular entity. God is plural. Jump to Jesus in the first century after Jesus and the second and third centuries, and we get the whole hammering out of the doctrine of the Trinity. But we have the quote-unquote Trinity throughout the Old Testament. Those early Christian writers talked about. Because we have all throughout the Old Testament what being bestowed on certain people. The Spirit of God. Isaiah will say, or Ezekiel will say, or Daniel will say, or Jeremiah will say, or Hosea, or Malachi. The Spirit of God came upon me. Now, for some people, that's just gobbledygook. That's just these guys were high. Or they had a trance-like, experience. Why? Because those who say that is gobbledygook start with what presupposition? God doesn't exist. Okay? So, here's what I'm going to ask you to do for the remainder of this course. Assume, whether you believe it or not, okay? Believe, faith. Assume, whether you believe it or not, God does exist. Why? You have to start from that standpoint in order for this book to make any sense. You have to. If you don't, then you start to miss all the quote-unquote meaning or significance of it. Because if you omit that, what are you immediately saying about everything that's in here? It's what?
Fiction.
It's fiction. It's just another story. And Ryken says it's okay to approach it as just another story. I mean, he will kind of say that. But it's pretty clear from reading Ryken, that's not what he believes. Because he's going to talk about, it's about what? God's relationship with us. Humanity. Period. That's what the Bible's about. Okay, now we can get a little bit more specific. Because who, within, let's say, the course of the Old Testament, is the Bible specifically about? Is it about God and Russians? No. God and Uruguayans? No. God and the Jews, or Hebrews, or Israelites, depending upon the context, etc. They become the chosen people. Are they the chosen people from the quote-unquote beginning of Genesis? I don't mean interpretively. I mean within literally they're in the Bible. No, they're not. Why? Because Adam isn't a Jew. They don't exist yet. When do they start to exist? Bingo. It's actually kind of starting with Abraham, when Abraham is called out. And God says, Abraham, leave your home and go to where I will direct you. And you'll see when we get there, he doesn't say, Abraham, okay, pull up your GPS, leave home, put these coordinates in, and follow the map. What does he say? Follow where I lead you. Think about that for a moment. Yeah, well, where are you leading me? You'll find out. How would you like to be given directions where someone just tells you, start here. Get on, 24 and start driving south. And I'll give you directions as you go along. La, 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 you know. But you're not driving. You're walking. And where are you? The Mideast. Where? Literally. Iraq. That's where Abraham, that's where Abraham lived at the beginning. Modern day Iraq. Describe modern day Iraq. Is it like Tennessee? Look out the window. Green trees, grass, water vapor. No, it's not. Most of it, hot, sandy, dry. Blech. And start walking. Okay? So, there's a lot going on there. Okay? So it's about God. It's about God's relationship with us. And leaving the Jews aside, what do the us do? Early. How? How do they sin? What is sin? Sin is the word sin, okay, is translated from the New Testament Greek, hamartia. Hamartia is a technical term. It means to miss the mark. Like target practice. You go to a shooting range, you set up a bow and arrow and a bale of hay, and you've got your target, and you've got, the outer circles, and you get that bullseye. Hamartia is to miss the bullseye. So how do you miss the mark? You don't do what you're supposed to do. Okay? How does Adam miss the mark? He doesn't listen to God. That's a pretty big missing the mark. Okay? So, it's about God. It's about us. It's about our relationship with God. Is that all it's about, ultimately? Just me and God? As the Protestant reformer said, it's all about me, my interpretation of the Bible. I don't need any priests. I don't need any church. I don't need anybody to get between me and God because it's all just me and Jesus hanging alone. No, that's not. Because what else is it about? Jesus gets asked a question. Master, what are the most important commandments? Anybody know how he replies?
Love your neighbor as yourself, and love God with all your heart, mind, and soul.
Exactly. In reverse order, though. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. By the way, the Old Testament doesn't have heart, mind, soul, and strength. It has heart, soul, strength. Mind is added by Christ in the words of the New Testament, and it's thought that that's because some of those that he is addressing are Greeks. So, big deal. Well, what's one of the, a huge difference between Greek folks, 1st century AD, and Jewish folks? What's a characteristic of Greek culture? Intelligence? Polytheism? Okay? It's an emphasis on the mind. Ideas, thought, logic. Okay? So, he kind of throws that in there. Why? He's going to cover all the bases. He's not going to exclude anybody. The original inclusivist, as it were. Okay? And your neighbor as yourself. So notice what the second part includes. There's two things being loved there. You got to love yourself, and you have to love your neighbor as yourself. So what then follows almost immediately upon that? Well, who's my neighbor? Mr. Rogers said everybody was his neighbor. He began every show with, "Hello, neighbor." Why? One, he's a Presbyterian minister. He knew the Bible inside and out. Why else? Because Jesus then goes on and tells a parable. What's the parable? The Good Samaritan. And what's it all about? How to be neighborly. What's the import of that? What's the whole purpose behind the parable of the Good Samaritan? The Bible's about God. It's about us. It's about, leave this aside, our relationship with or to God. And number 4, our relationship with to each other. It's ethics. That's what ethics is all about. Our interactions. We say ethical behavior is behavior that is respectful, good towards others. Unethical behavior is when you wrong somebody else. If you live by yourself on a desert island, totally by yourself, there's nobody else there, you cannot be unethical. It's impossible. But when somebody else finds that deserted island, now ethics is possible. Now politics is also possible. Because what's politics all about? The power between people. How they relate to each other, economically, governmentally, all that kind of stuff. Okay? So, our relationship with each other. And we can pretty much say that's it. The whole of the Bible is all right there. Because with each other includes what else? It includes people, right? What else does it include? How does the Bible begin? With creation. What's created before humanity? The stars, the moon, the sun, the world, plant life, animal life. All animal, however you want to define an animal. Single-celled organism all the way up to, the highest primate next to us, so to speak. That's all part of each other. All created things. Okay? Again, all of this assumes what? This is real, or this exists. Okay? So you've got to, for the purposes of this class at least, entertain the possibility. Okay? So, that's what it's all about. how did this thing come to be? Because it didn't come to be the same way the Quran came to be. Anybody know how the Quran came to be? According to Islam? Dictated. Literally dictated. From the lips of Gabriel to the ears of Muhammad. And Muhammad just kind of... Muhammad was a conduit. Is this dictated by God directly to, let's say, Moses? Moses' traditional authorship of what's called the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Old Testament. Traditional authorship is Moses wrote that. Biblical textual / literary scholars tell us, no, he didn't. It was written by a whole bunch of people much, much, much later. Okay? So, did God speak to Moses and Moses just write it all down? No. But we are told in the Pentateuch, Moses, before he died, left behind him writings. And in Joshua, book of Judges, before he dies, leaves behind him a book that gets placed in the Ark of the Covenant. Okay? And we hear about various other peoples in the Old Testament who wrote a book. Guess what? All of these books are quote-unquote missing until essentially what's called the Babylonian period. And this one guy goes to the king, he goes, "Oh, great and mighty king, I found a book hidden in the library. And the book is all about God's interaction with us. And oh boy, are we messing it up. We are not doing what God called us to do." And Josiah the king goes, "Okay, let's get that straightened out then. Let's start doing what God wants us to do," etc., etc. Okay? I'm going to stop there. Thursday, we're going to talk about the difference between this, what we call generally the Bible, and what gets called the Jewish Bible or the Hebrew Bible and the Christian Bible. Okay? And then some other stuff in maybe Genesis. Yes?
I was wondering, how do you know when there's a quiz? Like, you just post it on D12?
No, I won't post anything on D12. Just assume there will be a quiz.
Okay.